Picture this. You're at work after hours. The hallway is empty. At least, that's what you tell yourself. The old courthouse has been closed for a while as you finish up. The lights are low, the air is still, and every floorboard seems to remember the weight of people who walked these halls more than a century ago. You pause outside the former jail cells, listening. You're sure you just heard something, even though you know it's impossible. You expect it to be another person, a security guard, or anyone else. But the building is silent again. You call out. Nothing. Your heart races. You spin around, but no one is there. Then, the silence is broken when you hear,
"Get out, get out, get out, get out."
I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Today, I'm joined by Janet Clouston, Managing Director of a museum in Hopewell Cape, New Brunswick, that has the reputation of being one of the Maritime's most haunted sites. This is the Albert County Museum. Long before it became a museum, before tourists wandered its corridors and school children peered into the weathered jail cells, this hill overlooking the Petitcodiac River was home to the Mi'kmaq and the Wolastoqiyik nations, who were the first to live here. They were part of the Wabanaki Confederacy and have occupied these ancestral unceded lands since time immemorial. The First Nations utilized the area by following the seasons. During warm summer months, they established temporary coastal settlements like the one recorded at nearby Indian Island. This was to hunt and fish along the shores of the now world-famous Bay of Fundy. This dramatic coastline is renowned for having the highest tides on Earth, where billions of tons of seawater surges in and out twice each day, transforming the landscape in a matter of hours. Towering sea cliffs, dense forests, and persistent coastal fog give the region an untamed beauty that has captivated visitors for centuries. In the winter, nations migrated inland into the wooded hills to avoid the harsh coastal cold weather. In 1698, the area became home to a group of French settlers led by 67-year-old Pierre Thibodeau. He brought his family here from Annapolis, drawn by the fertile marshland at the base of the Sheppity Mountains. They diked back the tides, built the county's first church, and by 1750 had grown to more than 160 families. But sadly, it didn't last. In August 1755, English soldiers arrived to drive the Acadians from the region entirely. They burned homes and crops in a campaign that dragged on for years and cost many lives. English and German settlers were then offered the land that the Acadian community had cleared and farmed for half a century. By the mid-1800s, this stretch of the Bay of Fundy had become something else entirely, an economic engine. Shipbuilding, forestry, and mining, and everything produced in New Brunswick left by boat for Boston, which was the destination that mattered most. Janet Clouston said that by the time of Confederation in 1867, Albert County was one of the wealthiest communities in the entire country.
Was named by Queen Victoria, by the way, in 1845. She was 26 years old, and she was involved with everything that was happening in the Commonwealth, and she and Prince Albert were really hands-on when it came to what was going on around the world, and she loved her husband so much she named places all over the world after Prince Albert. So that's where we get our name from, is Albert County, after her beloved husband. A funny story about Alberta, as Queen Victoria was naming places, they were going to call Alberta Albert. And Princess Charlotte who was a young girl at the time, was upset, and she said to her mother, Queen Victoria, "How come they all have boy names? I think that there should be some girl names." There should be some girl names. And so Queen Victoria said, "Well, I think you're right." And that's how Alberta became Alberta. And then soon after that, Charlottetown in Prince Edward Island. So she named Charlottetown after her daughter, Princess Charlotte.
A young girl's complaint to her mother across the Atlantic had quietly rewritten a map, and Hopewell Cape, the Shire town capital of Albert County, was born. At its center is the imposing sandstone courthouse, completed in 1904 after fire destroyed its predecessor. Beside it stands the county jail, its thick walls and iron-barred cells serving as a silent reminder of an era when justice was swift, punishment was public, and mercy was never guaranteed. The town was quickly made into the administrative heart of the region, drawing judges, lawyers, merchants, farmers, fishermen, and residents from across the county. Court days transformed the quiet community into a bustling gathering place where legal disputes were settled, land deeds were recorded, elections were held, and justice was administered. By the 1960s, its political importance declined as the government of New Brunswick built new highways, hospitals, and hydroelectric dams. And with a stroke of the pen, the province abolished every county government. The historic buildings that once ran Albert County were suddenly without purpose. That is when a small group of citizens stepped in to create the Albert County Historical Society, with the goal of making sure the Shire town wasn't simply sold off, torn down, or forgotten.
The jail is there since 1845. So really people are stepping back in time when they come to the Albert County Museum and explore our 6 acres of property that we have. It's a beautiful landscape garden, and it all overlooks the ocean and the Petitcodiac River.
Over time, every building was acquired deed by deed over decades until the entire Shire town site was purchased. Janet said every single structure standing on the property today is original, and there are no recreations. The courthouse, the jail, and the community hall are all standing exactly where they were built, in the exact configuration of a town built in the 1800s. Like it's frozen in time, waiting. But more on that later. As the museum got started in 1962, they welcomed 200 donated items that have grown into a collection of more than 10,000 artifacts that have come from descendants of families from the town.
I started my job April Fool's Day of 2019. Great day to start a new job. And on April 2nd, I was cleaning up my desk and went through, and there was a newspaper article, and it said, the Albert County Museum will bring to life the history of New Brunswick in a way that's never happened before, said Dr. George Macbeth, curator of the New Brunswick Museum. I couldn't believe it. He is my uncle. I read the article and I'm like, oh my God, my uncle was, before I was born, my uncle was actually here at the site, at the ribbon cutting in 1962, congratulating the community.
Janet grew up in nearby Moncton, and she's always had a unique connection to the past.
I was going through the Elmwood Cemetery, pretty interesting, and I just stopped in my tracks. There was a grave site with a whole family there, and I just was fascinated. It was from the 1800s, and I just was like, wow, that's interesting, like the whole family. And an entity, just a little girl, a little boy, I'm not sure, told me the story that the house burnt down and the whole family died. And they just told me the story as if they were sitting there talking to me. That's what they told me, that there was a fire and the whole family died in the fire, and it was really, really sad day for that little person. And I'm like, wow. And I just sat there with them. And then I got on my bike. I'm like, well, it's time to go home for dinner. And I went home, and I didn't tell anybody about it. It just happened. And it didn't freak me out. It didn't upset me. It was just like I had a conversation with a little friend, and the little friend told me that their family all died in a fire, and that's why they're there.
That connection to the other side of the veil has helped Janet while at Albert County Museum, a place where history is carefully preserved, but where the past has never truly left. Today, the centuries-old buildings that make up the Albert County Museum stand as reminders of a time when the village played a vital role in shaping the province's legal and civic history. They preserve the stories of the people who lived, worked, and, in some cases, spent their final days within its walls.
There was a day, it was in August, probably 3-4 years ago now, 3 seasons ago, where almost everybody who came to the museum who went in the jail were like, what's going on in the jail? Like, there's something happening in there. Like, my staff, all the guests, like, it just was like a thing. Like, there's something in the jail. There's something happening in there. And then at the end of the day, when we were locking up, my employee, who was neither a person who believed in paranormal or a skeptic, she was just an employee who was locking up. And all she could hear is, get out, get out, get out, get out. Like it was speaking to her, get out. And she's like, okay, we're leaving now. And she closed the door and set the alarm and closed the door and locked it. And that's what she told me. Like, she came down and said, I just kept hearing, get out, get out, get out.
Janet says the jail's most persistent resident is the daughter of one of the jail keepers that sadly died, most likely from Spanish influenza, on the property around age 4 and was buried on the grounds. Staff and visitors alike have reported seeing her wandering around the jail. She's never menacing or distressed. Instead, she's more like a child might be, present in a home she's always known.
One of the paranormal investigators, again at Ghost Hunting Day, this was probably 5 years ago, same thing, she didn't know that she was coming here. She had never heard of the Albert County Museum before, in fact, and she walked onto the property, and there was the little girl. And so she said, take me to your favorite place here. And the little girl just walked her, like energetically walked into the jail and walked up the stairs in the jail. There's a second floor in the jail, and then walked over and took the paranormal medium into a room all full of kids' toys, little school desks. There's dolls in there. There's an exhibit called 100 Years of Toys.
The little girl had shown the investigator the way. Although her name isn't recorded anywhere in the museum's archives, her presence remains. She adds to the reputation that the museum is one of the most haunted locations in the Maritimes. And although she is often present, she is not the most famous resident within the walls. That distinction goes to Thomas Collins. He was an English immigrant and veteran of the Boer Wars. According to legend, Father Macaulay ran a traveling parish out of the community of New Ireland, close to what is now Fundy National Park. The priest relied on his cousin, Mary Ann Macaulay, to care for his rectory and home while he was away. To help her, he hired Thomas Collins.
Well, the job didn't last very long for Collins, because within a week, Mary Ann Macaulay was dead and he was on the run. It wasn't a long term, like he wasn't there a long time. He was really the only suspect, because she was clearly murdered in the woodshed. And they also couldn't find the axe, by the way.
In the summer of 1906, Mary Ann Macaulay, the 52-year-old housekeeper, was found murdered in the rectory woodshed. She had suffered a devastating axe wound to the back of her head, and her throat had been cut. 22-year-old Thomas "Tom" Collins had vanished, along with several of the priest's belongings. Collins was arrested days later near the Maine border after an extensive manhunt. He was carrying property linked to the rectory and gave investigators several contradictory accounts and alibis.
He was a terrible getaway man. He booked a hotel room in Elgin, which was the town very close here, and was seen leisurely reading a book out on the porch. And anyway, so they ended up capturing him. He did finally, I guess, realize he should probably leave New Brunswick, and they caught him heading towards the border, towards St. Stephen's. And then they arrested him and brought him right here to the cells at the Albert County Jail.
At the time, the idea of a murder in the small, peaceful, prosperous shipbuilding county was almost unheard of, and the case became a sensation.
It was so rare, in fact, that Premier Tweedy, who was the Premier of New Brunswick, took a leave of absence from his job so he could come and be the prosecutor at this trial. Wow, how a great way to get attention. And so he was actually at the preliminary hearing on behalf of the province of New Brunswick. And the courthouse was packed with people. I mean, they just oh my God, there's been a murder.
His trial began during a cold maritime January. Throughout the investigation and every trial that followed, Collins admitted that he had stolen from the rectory, but steadfastly denied murdering Mary Ann McCauley, insisting someone else had committed the crime after he left. The Crown's case rested almost entirely on circumstantial evidence, including the stolen property in his possession, his flight from the area, and a razor believed to have belonged to Father McCauley that prosecutors argued may have been used in the killing. Questions also lingered about an axe, believed to be the murder weapon, that was discovered hidden inside the rectory weeks after police had already searched the building. Those unanswered questions would become central to Collins's defense and fueled public debate because the trial didn't end with a verdict, but with a scandal of its own.
The first trial was determined, it was a mistrial. The Judge Gregory, who was officiating, several times through the case, instructed the jury that really they should pay attention when there was certain evidence that was given, pretty much ensuring they paid really close attention when there was evidence that could convict Collins. Almost like telling the jury when they went in to deliberate, you need to go in there and do your job, and, really you should find him guilty. I think because it was such an important, notorious trial, I think he got a little bit excited about his importance. So when they came out with a guilty verdict, the defense counsel said, I'm asking for a mistrial here, because everybody in the courthouse had heard Judge Gregory, was actually in the journals. I mean, it was evidence. And so it was agreed that it was a mistrial, and Judge Gregory's career never was the same after, because he had made such a terrible blunder on such an, important case.
A second trial followed later that same year. After months of searching for evidence, investigators finally located the murder weapon.
It took them about 2 months to find the axe. They couldn't find the murder weapon. And where they ended up finding it was in the rectory, in the bedroom of the priest. It was stuck in behind a commode. If you know what a commode is, it's an indoor toilet. But it was a cabinet, it was a nice, beautiful wooden commode, and the axe was actually put between the commode and the wall, and that's where the axe was found.
At his second trial, Collins took the stand in his own defense.
Collins gave testimony in the second trial on his own defense, and he said, I didn't kill her. She was alive when I left, and he said, he admitted to stealing, that he had stolen some of a couple of watches and some clothing and things that he had taken, a bit of money. He said, I'm a thief, but I'm no murderer.
Public sympathy for Collins ran surprisingly deep. He was described as social, well-read, and well-liked.
If people asked him what he needed, he'd ask for books. He's an avid reader. People would bring him food. There was people, actually the community members paid for his defense also. It was kind of strange, like the prosecution really felt he was so guilty, and so many other people thought he was innocent, that he was just such a nice young man, he couldn't possibly kill anybody.
Because of this, the second trial ended in a hung jury. 7 jurors were certain Collins was innocent, while 5 believed he was guilty, and neither side was willing to budge. So, a year after his arrest, he stood trial for a 3rd time. This was the first time in Canadian history that a single murder case had gone to trial 3 times. And this time, the jury reached a unanimous verdict: guilty.
They tried to get a stay of execution. They actually reached even out to the Prime Minister of Canada at the time to see. The Prime Minister of Canada said, I'm not involved in New Brunswick law. So he sort of got himself off, I will not get involved in the affairs of the provinces, and the province of New Brunswick had convicted him, and they said, his punishment is death by hanging.
Under New Brunswick law, there was only one sentence. Thomas Collins would be executed for his crime. At sunrise on November 15th, 1907, Thomas Collins was taken to the gallows. He went quietly with only a handful of witnesses present. His body was buried in an unmarked grave on the grounds and stayed there for 60 years until the site was decommissioned. His remains were then removed and taken down the road to the Lower Cap Cemetery. Janet says that the jail where Thomas Collins had been a prisoner for a year while 3 separate juries decided his fate is the single most active building on the entire property. That's what staff have believed for a while, and they got proof when a paranormal investigator arrived without any prior knowledge of the location.
She started envisioning an axe. And then it wasn't just an axe, it was like a 2-headed axe, like double-sided axe, quite old. And it wasn't a new axe, it was an old double-sided axe. And she just kept seeing it. And then she could feel a chopping motion. She started sensing this chopping motion. And just something happened, something with the axe. It wasn't just the axe itself, but there was some motion of chopping or cutting with the axe. Then she got here and started walking around, and she walked into the jail and walked into cell number 3 in the jail and pointed and said, that's the axe I've been seeing. It's right there on the wall. How do you explain that? That is the axe I've been seeing in my dreams, my premonition about where we were going and what I was going to experience. And she said that axe killed someone.
Since then, there have been others that have also gravitated to the jail.
There was a paranormal investigator here from Ontario. Elliot is his name. And he came on his own. And so I asked, I get these calls quite often. Would you open up the jail for me? I want to do an investigation. And I said, well, yeah. He said, great. Why don't you just come in and do the investigation with me? So I'm like, Elliot, I need to work here, so I'll come in and spend some time with you, but really, you do the investigation. But we walked around the jail together, and he had a voice recorder, and we weren't getting anything out of the voice box. But we walked around, and then we went upstairs, and he said, Tom, I know you're free to be around the building anywhere you want to, so hey, let's go upstairs and see if you're there. So we walk around upstairs, and he's got the voice box, and we are in that same room with the kids' stuff, the toys. And he said, Tom, do you have anything to say? And what Tom said was, Janet. And Elliot was like, you heard that too, right? And I said, yeah. I heard my name through the voice box. Now, any of the paranormal investigators that bring this up say Tom quite likes me. Tom is very protective of me.
On that day, the investigator found out Tom's connection to Janet. But that second floor seems to be a center of paranormal activity. Remember, first, there was the investigator that connected to the child with the toys. Then Tom called out to Janet. The second floor is also where a Nickelodeon music box has come alive all on its own.
And there was one season that it would just come on. It just would start to play music. The music box would just automatically come on. And I think it happened one time too much for this young student. And they said, here's my uniform and my keys. I can't work here. I don't like it. I'm scared of the jail. And so in the time that I've been involved, there's only been one incident like that.
That student hasn't been the only one frightened by the jail.
I know for myself, I never lock the jail last. If I'm locking up at night, the jail is a building I close, but I don't ever close it last because I just don't want that energy coming home with me. I learned that. I'll close the jail and then I'll take a walk through the courthouse and say, you got your punishment, and then and lock that up, or I'll go into the community hall and finish my day there, or come back to my office and get on the computer and do a few things. But yeah, I don't ever lock up the jail last.
The energy that Janet dislikes the most comes from a smaller cell in the older section of the jail. It's where debtors used to be held, because in 1800, being in debt could land you in jail.
Quite a lot of paranormal activity happening in the debtor cell. That's really a hot spot. One of the inmates that was in there, I think, was not a very good person. And so there's often references from paranormal investigators or the general public that walk into the debtor cell. I know I feel it too. I'm not a big fan of being in that building, I will let you know.
The jail might be the site where at least 3 different spirits have been identified, but the courthouse next door also has a reputation for being haunted. It is the location where all 3 of Collins's trials were held, and where visitors regularly describe seeing a tall man.
There are quite a few people that experience paranormal energy in the courthouse itself. There's a lady seen in there. There's a sad businessman is often sighted, tall in a dark suit in the corner, looking out the window. Upstairs in I'm on a very regular basis will hear someone tell me they've seen an image of a tall, sad businessman in a suit.
Only a few days ago, an entire class of high school students got their own paranormal experience inside the courthouse.
I mentioned that we had a ghost hunting event a week ago, and quite a few people were seeing paranormal activity up in the balcony above us, just up there. And all of a sudden, Nadine, bang! Like all of us stopped. And it's like, okay, everyone heard that. And there was nobody in the balcony. There was nobody up there. We were all downstairs, and there was absolutely nobody on the balcony. There was like a fist, like something banging, and it was all like, okay, we all heard that. Like we all experienced it. It's not just like I heard it and this other person heard it. All the kids, and it was probably like 60 kids. We all experienced the same thing. This sort of random banging sound that happened. So, I don't know. How do you explain that? Well, you don't. You share it on a podcast.
Just recently, a tourist from Switzerland traveled to Hopewell Cape specifically because she listens to Haunted Canada.
She's like a very matter of fact. And she said, yes, this is haunted. She's all seriousness. Like they chose to come to this location to go into the jail, and she walked around and came back out and said, yeah, without a doubt, that's haunted. And then asked me for the instructions as to where she could see Collins's grave.
She probably wanted to see his original unmarked grave because it carries its own quiet strangeness. Museum staff wanted to finally mark the location where Collins had been buried before his remains were relocated to Lower Cape, but they had nothing to go on but instinct when they did it.
The following year, a paranormal investigator was here, and she was quite excited. She said, "I know exactly where Tom Collins was buried." She goes, "Come with me, I'm going to show you." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go with you." And she walked right up to the spot where I had chosen symbolically to say, this is where Tom was buried. We had the rock there with the TC, and she walked right up to that spot and said, "Right there." And she's like, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's a rock, because that I'm replicating what they had. There was no grave markers, but we replicated it. My staff did it, and we put it there." So it was literally exactly the same spot where my hunch was that Tom was buried. And that's the spot that she said, "Oh, I guess you know already." Because that's where she said, I had it in my dreams that I knew where he was buried, and I had to come tell you. And it was identical to the spot we had chosen to put the marker.
For generations, these halls witnessed some of Albert County's most defining moments. Farmers, fishermen, merchants, and laborers climbed the courthouse steps seeking justice, while others were brought through the doors in chains, uncertain if they would ever leave as free people again. The buildings have outlived every judge who presided here, every sheriff who carried its keys, every prisoner who stared through its barred windows, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Time has transformed the courthouse from a place of authority into one of remembrance, preserving not only the artifacts of Albert County's past, but the atmosphere of a world that no longer exists. That's partly what drew Janet to include the town's community hall, which was built in 1870, in their paranormal investigations.
We're in there, and not much was happening. We had the sensors out, and we had, the voice box, and we had everything on, and we were sort of stayed for a while, and, if you're in here, talk to us and what have you. And nothing was happening. And I said, well, we may not get much in here, because this building was built by the community with love. Like, this building was built for a gathering place for the community, and it was built with love for the community. As soon as I said that, the sensors started going, and it was like, wow, say that again. And I said, well, it was built for the community because of the love for their community. That's why they built this building as a gathering place. And again, the sensors started going off. So we're like, okay, how do we follow this? And I said, well, there would have been old time fiddle music in here. This was a community gathering place, and part of what they would do was play music. Like the old maritime kitchen party idea. And so a lady got on her phone and put on some old time fiddle music. The sensors just started lighting up.
Janet says that experience has shaped how she handles the moments when she's in some of the buildings and the energy feels heavy.
My first season at the museum, I had a lot coming at me, energy-wise, because I'm open to it, and I'm not like the TV show Sixth Sense. I don't see dead people, but I certainly feel energy. And so I just started saying out loud, I'm a good person, and I'm here to tell your story. Anytime I felt sort of uncomfortable, I would just out loud say, I'm a good person, and I'm here to tell your story. And I still do that today. If I'm feeling, a little overwhelmed, that I'm a good person, I'm here to tell your story. That seems to work.
Whether you believe the Albert County Museum is home to restless spirits or simply the echoes of a remarkable past, one thing is certain. Its walls have witnessed more than a century of human triumph, tragedy, justice, and loss. Every courtroom verdict, every prison sentence, and every life forever altered within these buildings has become a part of the story that Janet tells to visitors. Those people are preserved here. Perhaps the unexplained experiences reported by visitors are nothing more than the sounds and shadows of an aging historic site. Or perhaps history has a way of lingering long after we are gone. Whatever the explanation, the Albert County Museum stands as a powerful reminder that the past is never as distant as it seems. So make sure you go inside and explore. Just don't be the last one to lock up. Thank you for joining me as we explore the Albert County Museum in Hopewell Cape, New Brunswick, and a special thank you to Janet Clouston, Managing Director, for taking the time to talk with me. I really do appreciate it. If you want to visit the Albert County Museum, I will link their website in the show notes. Do you have a ghost story, paranormal encounter, or true crime? If yes, email it to me so that I can cover it and share it with all the listeners on this podcast. Please email me through the website, hauntedcanada.com. If this episode gave you the chills in the best possible way, please consider supporting this show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every coffee helps to keep these stories coming. And if you want to go even deeper, stay tuned because I will be adding a Patreon very soon. Haunted Canada is sponsored by the Edmonton Ghost Tours. I will link the website in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer Dina Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnston, with help from Corey Price. If you'd like to support this podcast, please follow, share, and tell a friend about this podcast. We would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. And if you're on Spotify, tap follow. It helps more people find these Canadian ghost stories. Also, you could follow me under different social media platforms, including TikTok and my YouTube channel, Haunted Canada. Hey everyone, I've got some exciting news. I'll be hosting a haunted and paranormal tour of Ireland from May 22nd to the 29th of 2027 in partnership with my friend Joanne at Expedia. We'll be visiting haunted locations, staying in haunted castles, exploring many historical places, all while delving into ghosts, hauntings, and paranormal activity, so be sure to bring your EMF readers with you. All information, including the itinerary and how to book, is on my website, hauntedcanada.com. I can't wait to explore Ireland with you. Remember, book early, space is limited. Again, thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.